Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to tonight's Instagram live stream. Tonight, my special guest is Gregor McQuee, who is the Dramface Whisky podcast host, and you can find him under his Instagram handle, Time for a Dram. We're going to share a few drams and talk about whiskey. So with that, let me jump on and get him onto this live stream. Gregor, how you doing? We got you on here.
I'm good. Sorry, I don't know if it was tech problems, my end, your end.
You know, there's always a little bit of a struggle to get somebody on these Instagram lives, but you're here now, so that's good.
All good. All good. Nice to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. It's been a while. I guess the last time we met up was back in October, was it? When I swung by Oregon?
Yeah. I took you, or I met you in my local haunt, my local whiskey bar, the Scotch Lodge.
Yeah, the Scotch Lodge, and that was a fantastic whiskey lodge too. I mean, that was a really nice bar.
Yeah, it was good. It's good. I shouldn't talk about it too much because the more I talk about it, the busier it gets, the harder it is to get in. But yeah, it was good. It was good. Good selection of drams.
Yeah,
There's good options.
Yeah, absolutely. So tonight we're going to share a few drams. Just for the people watching, we'll quickly review those three that we're going to have. We'll start off with that Anok 12-year-old. And then we're going to hop up to the elusive Springbank 10. Perfect. And then we're going to finish off with this special dram that you handed off to me when I saw you last. Yeah. All right, perfect. I was hoping I didn't lose your sample in my shuffle of all the samples behind me, but thankfully it was right out front, so I had no worries because that is one that I'm very interested to try, and we'll get into that one shortly. So tonight we'll start off with the dram. I'm going to ask you a few questions, a little bit about your background, a little bit about whiskey, and each section will be highlighted with one of our drams that we have. So with that, let's jump right into the Anok 12-year-old.
Sure.
So what are your thoughts of the Anok 12-year-old?
Yeah, so Anok for me, I picked this. This is a bit like, if I try to pick drams to be a little bit chronological, autobiographical, or at least at key points in my whiskey journey. And ironically, I would say we've gone Tarantino. This would be at the end of my journey.
All right.
In as much as for me, Anok's such a weird and pretty unique dram that I don't think I would have appreciated it in the same way if I had it at the start of my journey.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, I think it. I don't know how popular it is, sort of mainstream, but it's a pretty unique one for me that I don't know that I would have picked all of the nuances in my early days of whiskey drinking.
No, that's interesting because I mean, Anok is not a mainstream whiskey by any means. Most casual drinkers don't really know what Anok is. And when I first got into my whiskey journey, one of the first people I started to listen to and follow was Roy. And he was big into the Anok, especially the 24-year-old at the time was ridiculously affordable. And so right off the bat, it was my introduction to well-aged, affordable Scotch whiskey. And it clicked with me immediately. It was one of the whiskeys that I really loved right off the bat. So this Anok has a special place for me in the beginning of my whiskey journey. And it's one even to this day that I'm still enjoying because it provides good value. It's usually an engaging, interesting whiskey, and even the 12-year-old, which is probably one of the lesser engaging expressions that they have, is a really nice, easy sipping whiskey.
Yeah, it's a bright whiskey. It's super bright for me. I don't know if I necessarily get lemon, but it's citrusy in that world for me. I don't know if you would say it's classic Scotch, but I love it. It's a super bright, light whiskey. It would probably be one at the front end of a flight, which is
exactly why we're kicking off with this one. So it might not work well with the narrative of your whiskey journey, but it works well with the beginning of a flight. Lowest ABV that we have here, and just a nice, gentle, and like you said, bright whiskey that we're having. Though I was reading the description on the bottle, and it says complex smoky taste. I don't get any smoke at all on the palate, so I don't know who's writing up these descriptions, but I'm not sure I agree with that.
Yeah, I don't get any smoke there, and I mean, we'll get into smoke maybe in the next dram, but I'm not a massive peat head, so I would be picking it up if anybody was. There's nothing wrong with that dram, and there's no smoke.
Yeah, so no peat for you, no rye for you. Those are your two no-nos, right?
Yeah, rye's the devil's grain. I guess there's a place for it. I'll tell you where the place for rye is. is for casks for Rashi to age their whiskey in.
That's very true. That is very true. But yeah, no, this is a nice whiskey, and this one is mostly ex-bourbon casks, I would assume, in this maturation.
Yeah. Also by the colour, I would have thought it's pretty unadulterated.
Yeah. And have you ever been to the Knockdhu distillery?
I've not. So I went on a pretty monumental whiskey road trip last year for 2 weeks, and unfortunately, it didn't make the cut. You know? Like there was a few that were on my bucket list, and it wasn't quite there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when I went to Scotland last September, Anach, or the Knockdhu distillery, was on my list because we were going through Speyside, and I go to their website and it said, oh, sorry, right now we're not doing tours because of COVID. They still had this old website on, but I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to email them anyways. And they reached out to me. It was like, yeah, sure, come on by. And I had the master distiller, Gordon Bruce, just take me and my group around, just us. Right. And he took us around the whole process. And then we go back to his office and he just pulls out all these Anach bottles to just like taste. He's like, all right, help yourself, guys. And it was just one of the coolest experiences I had when I was in Scotland.
That's great. And it's funny, you know, we tend to think of these distilleries as like super brands and this super corporate, but when you get there, it's honest people doing honest work, and as soon as they get a whiff that you're passionate, the doors open, the arms open. So it was great that you did that, and I'd encourage anyone to reach out to a distillery directly. Even when you're there. Yeah, that's great. I love it.
No, I think that's the best way to kind of really engage in a whiskey experience is, go kind of off the beaten path. Not many people are seeking out Knockdhu, and really just have like a down to earth, not organized tour of the facilities with somebody who's involved with the operations. And that was one of the highlights of the trip out to Scotland.
I think they don't help themselves by the name switch, right?
No.
The whiskey isn't the same name as the distillery. So I think that keeps it under the radar.
It does, and I'm sure you know the reason why they are Anach and not Knockdhu is because the marketing people didn't want people to confuse Knockdhu with Knockcandu. So they're like, all right, let's just make up a different name for it, and they came up with Anach, which I think is like the mountain by there. So I forget exactly where Anach comes from, but it really is a shame because they should be using the name of the distillery, because the whiskey that they produce there is, for me, it's an above average whiskey, and it could really stand on its own name without people really being confused with Knockcandu, especially in today's day and age with so many whiskey influencers out there and people to kind of highlight and elevate different styles and brands.
Yeah, I agree. And the more I'm drinking this now, I can fully understand why Roy is a big fan and a big pusher of it. He loves ex-bourbon and Puritan. Straight down the road. Yeah,
exactly. Keeping it simple. Has like a nice, a little bit heavier style of whiskey, at least in my opinion. And it's just overall a really enjoyable whiskey. So this is a good choice by you for this evening. There's my wife is just saying hi to you on the chat here.
Who's that?
My wife.
All right, very good. I'll get comments on my hair. Quite impressive that it's only, I didn't realise it before now, or impressive. It's only 43%.
Yep.
And it packs a good punch for 43, flavour punch for 43%.
Yeah, this is not a whiskey I would typically seek out because of that low ABV, but I forget why I ended up picking up, probably because I just like Anach and Knockdhu in general. And I've been really impressed with engaging in this one. It's the only one that's bottled at 43% too. All their other expressions, they're 18-year-old. Some of their limited releases are at least 46 or higher. So it is an interesting choice to go to 43%, I guess, to make it a little more approachable to the casual drinker.
Would it be a rebuy for you, even if it's at 43%?
Well, at the right price, I think it would be, because like you said, I think this is a great entry or beginning dram to a flight. It'll help acclimate our palate. It's a little bit more delicate because of that lower ABV, and it's just a really nice whiskey. And the interesting thing I found when I was at the distillery and I was talking to Gordon Bruce was I was like, enthusiasts rave about your whiskey. I mean, we love it. And he's like, oh, I had no idea. He's like, the marketing people don't tell me this stuff. He had no idea that Anok whiskey was elevated in the eyes of the influencer, at least in the enthusiast. Maybe not so in the mainstream markets, but most of their whiskey gets sent off to blends. So he didn't really understand the gravity of what he was making, it seemed.
I love it. I love it. And I love that you were the one telling him that, and that was new info for him.
Yeah, no, it was really cool. And he said one of the challenges with the whole brand is that every few years they have a change in basically marketing leadership, and they all want to go into a different direction. So there's never been a real clear vision over the long term for this brand, and that's kind of hindered its kind of worldwide acceptance.
And I think, Roy, it sort of alludes that I liken it to like the eye of Sauron.
Yeah.
Of like, you know, the big brands taking their eyes, or whoever the owner, and he's a bit worried that the eye of Sauron is turning to Anok.
Yeah.
And he triggered me because I went out and bought, I think, the 18 at a good price because of all that he waxes lyrical about. I've not opened that bottle yet.
Oh, the 18's really nice, and I think I definitely agree with you. The fact that it's still a little bit under the radar still means it still provides a good value for the consumer. But once they kind of put the Bell Blair and the old Pulteney marketing on it, that it was Ivanhouse or whatever who owns this brand, that's when we're going to start seeing those prices go up, because still the 24-year-old. Yeah. The price has gone up over the last few years, but it's still between $150 and $200 abroad, and that's one of the best values you can get for a well-aged Scotch whiskey on the market, and it still packs a punch. It's still a fantastic whiskey.
Right. And that can't, you know, shame on Talisker when Anok is doing what they can at 24-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair play.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, Talisker is a whole different story. I mean, they're going in the opposite direction to the point where it's hard to stomach some of the prices of their older age statements nowadays.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you just a couple of questions about your journey, your whiskey journey. How did you kind of get kicked off in entering this whiskey world? And, you know, what was your initial experience? What got you interested in it?
Well, I think I've told the story a few times. Not that it's a fixed story, but it happened, so it's fixed. I guess being Scottish, there is definitely an assumption made of you that you love whiskey and you drink whiskey. Mm-hmm. So I went through, and quite honestly, I didn't really jive with it through my 20s. I would always have a bottle of whiskey in the house, or whatever, right? Like a Hogmanay or whatever. And that's the biggest cardinal sin. If you're Scottish and you don't have whiskey in the house on New Year or Hogmanay, as we would say, that's, you'll get your saltire removed. But honestly, I was never reaching for it for pleasure.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I asked you, did you have any Glenmorangie 10? Because it was always a Glenmorangie that I had. That was super approachable and a good spot. So you've got the 20s, and in mid-30s, I started to think about, like, I think I probably should get into whiskey. Mm-hmm. And then I didn't take it properly serious until, I was thinking on the way here, I was thinking it's probably about 2016 or 2017. Yeah. And I said, do you know what? I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to give it a concerted effort. I'm going to try. So, and it quickly, you know, the University of YouTube was open by then. So it didn't take long before I found Roy and, you know, Scotch for Dummies, Scotch Test Dummies, that world. And that triggered me. I was like, okay, there's a lot more to this. And then it lit a fire under my ass, I'll be honest. For the next 2 years, I went pretty crazy. It went like supermarket sweep. It was just all and anything, and I was fascinated by the variety. Mm-hmm. And so much so that I built up a collection because I wanted to have anything for any mood that I was in. As soon as I understood that, you know, there truly is a whiskey for everyone, every mood. So that was kind of it went out of control.
Yeah, no, and I think that's such a relatable story. Somebody was asking what we're drinking right now. We're drinking the Anok 12-year-old. And I think that is a common story among the whiskey enthusiasts. Once you have a taste of something that kind of engages you and it clicks within your palate and your mind, you just kind of jump down that rabbit hole and you go hard, especially in that beginning phase. And you can see behind me, my whiskey collection accumulated fairly quickly when I got into the whiskey game. And it's still, to this day, you get that FOMO. I know you're good at, like, pushing that aside, but you still have those urges. It was like, man, I really want to try this whiskey. I really want to buy that bottle. And it's just something that's like constantly nagging at you as you kind of go through your whiskey journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, the thing I liken it to, I think we've all probably seen that video of the kid or the adult who's colorblind and they get given the glasses that allow them to see color.
Yeah.
That was what it was like for me with whiskey. It was like, oh wow. And then you go crazy on like, oh well, I need to try this, try that, try it. You know,
yeah.
Like discovering new color.
Yeah.
It was like discovering new taste. So but I have, in the last couple of years, I've tried to back off being so crazy with the purchasing, because I worked out the math, and you know, there's probably more bottles than years I have to drink it.
Oh, yeah. That I guess you just need to increase your consumption rate. You know, you got to get that. You got to get that break even.
You'll probably find if you do up it, those years reduce.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Oh man, that's true though. I do that math frequently, saying, you know, given my current consumption rate, how many years of bottles do I currently have? But I always keep in the back of my head, my rationalization is I share so much of my whiskey, it's going to go by so much faster. So, you know, I think that's part of the fun is making sure you're sharing it with like-minded people and just trying to, you know, spread the love and get people to understand why you like whiskey so much.
I agree. I do agree. Yeah.
Now, do you remember what the first bottle that you had that really like that was it that clicked and engaged with you?
Well, like I said, I always flirted with Glenmorangie, so it was always around. I'm trying to think though which one would have been the one that put me on. It would probably be Glengoyne. Glengoyne, like, because when I started to scratch the itch and watch YouTube videos and see people's reviews, I suddenly, there was a bit of a swell around Glengoyne at the time. And I think Roy had just given the dummies, I think, a 25. And seeing their reaction to it, I was like, okay. And I maybe wasn't even fully aware of Big Sherry by then. And so I think I ran out and got a 21. I skipped. And honestly, that's the worst mistake, is skipping your education.
Yeah.
Like I skipped 10 through 15, 18, I just went to 21. And that blew my mind.
Oh, yeah.
And that set me on the sherry path for a good few years. So yeah, Glengoyne 21.
Yeah, and I mean, the Glengoyne, at least back a few years ago, was one of those great values in Scotch whiskey. I remember when I got the 21, this was in 2020, I think, it was like $120 for the 21-year-old, which was a crazy good value. And now the price, Glengoyne's prices have really skyrocketed, probably partially because of influencers and enthusiasts who talked about it and touted it up so much. Everybody rushed out to buy it. So, you know, unfortunately, it's not necessarily the value it once was.
Yeah, and isn't that the cycle of things? It gets talked about so much, it blows up. And equally, for us, the enthusiasts and the flavour chasers, when you start to hear something getting talked about, you go crazy on it, buy lots of it before it goes there, because you know it will go there.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what happens. And I still do have quite a few Glengoynes from the early part of my whiskey journey. It may not be something I really seek out as much now, especially because it is bottled at that lower proof. So, you know, that's something that can be a little more engaging at a higher proof. But it is a common early stage whiskey journey, that Glengoyne, because it is really a nice one. I just recently got actually on my way back from Scotland, I picked up the 15-year-old finished in PX casks, and that one is bottled at 48%, and that one is just unbelievably great. It's superb. I wish I had gotten more than a single bottle, because that one is really phenomenal.
Wait, so you got a Glengoyne 15, was that in duty free?
It was duty free, yeah. It was travel retail.
Higher.
Yeah, it was exceptional. To the point that I liked it even more than the 21-year-old. It's that good, and I still have maybe a third to a half bottle left. And if you're interested, I'll snag a sample for you and send it out, because it really is exceptional whiskey. That additional, you know, it still has that very like relaxed, rich sherry flavor profile, not spicy at all, but it's got the additional boldness of that higher ABV, and it's just all integrated so well. Right. It's such a beautiful whiskey. It's reminds me more of the 25-year-old than the 21-year-old. It's really an excellent whiskey. Right.
So you've proven there is at least one thing to get in a duty free when you go through.
Yes.
It is quite hard.
It is, and I think my timing was perfect because it was right around the time that Glengoyne came out. Because right now I don't even know if it would be available. And my only regret is I didn't get more than one. It was on the pricier side. It was about $100, but the drinking experience was well above that price point. I mean, it was really outstanding stuff. So I'll have to snag a sample for you and send it out so you can enjoy it and see what you think.
Sure. Sure.
So you are the host of the Dramface podcast, right? What else? What other kind of involvement do you have with that website?
Other than the podcast?
What's that?
What involvement do I have other than the podcast?
Other than the podcast, yeah.
Funny, I could pretend like I'm one of the writers because it's all pseudonyms and avatars. No, I've yet to write for Dramface, so it's solely in the voice talent role, if you can call it that.
All right. Yeah, and for anybody who's watching who's not familiar with Dramface, definitely go to dramface.com. It's one of the best whiskey education websites you can go to. Obviously, they have reviews, but they also have the history and the stories behind the bottles, which enhances the value of kind of going to that website. It's one of my favorite ones to check out, and one that I always, every time I see a new bottle pop up, I'm like, ooh, let's see what Dramface says about that. So it is really cool. I've noticed that your podcasts have kind of slowed down over the course of the last, half a year or so. Is this something like an intentional pullback, or are you guys planning on kind of launching out some more?
Again, I could pretend that it's by design and it's to drive demand. It's just life. It's just life. We most everyone. That's the thing that people maybe don't appreciate from a lot of all the writers. Most everyone is doing it in their free time. And
yeah,
it's driven by passion. That's what's unique about it. Is it's by the passionate for the passionate.
Mm-hmm.
So scheduling is just it's a reality as well. Like I'm over here in the US time zone. I'm Portland, Oregon, so that makes it a little bit difficult just to align on dates and times. So I think we will still get close to. I think Roy and I picked around a season would be around 12 episodes. So we've got another 2 bags, and we're hoping to record another 2 sessions this month.
All right,
we'll get another 4 episodes. And the last few are going to be quite fun. They're going to be quite novel. And the premise of the podcast was really to kind of lift the curtain behind Dramface and let some of the writers talk about stuff. And, there was a little fun game of you don't know who's matching the author, right? Who's matching the writer.
Yeah.
But we have found a groove that seems to resonate, which is it's normal people, whiskey passionate, just talking and sharing their insights.
Yeah.
So far, it does seem to resonate. It's not overly. It's not scripted.
Yeah.
I typically have a few touch points or topics or things to throw into the conversation, but it's natural, which it seems to resonate. Yeah,
it really does, especially with people who are really passionate about whiskey, because you can hear the passion and the intrigue that everybody else has on the podcast. So it feels like you're part of the conversation just listening in the background. So you guys are doing a great job with the Dramface podcast, and I look forward to your future drops when they come out in the next few months.
Yeah, all good.
And so last question before we jump onto that Springbank 10. What do you do outside of this whiskey stuff? What's your profession? And I know what it is, but for the viewers who are watching, what do you do?
I'm a footwear designer at Adidas. I've been at Adidas for 17 years. I help create sneakers and designs around sneakers. Typically before it was the performance brand or performance arm, so it was a lot of performance running stuff.
Yeah.
And then most recently, it's more lifestyle based stuff.
What have you seen the movie Air yet?
Yes.
And what was your thoughts of it? Was that a good illumination of what happens on the shoe creation side?
To some degree, and it's funny because some of the characters are quite intertwined historically with Adidas as well.
Yeah.
Peter Moore, who is the designer of the Jordan, he was instrumental in Adidas. He left Nike, and he was instrumental in putting Adidas back on track with EQT equipment.
Yeah.
Sort of mid-90s. So, it's Hollywood as well. They've definitely taken some poetic license, even with some of the history. But it was enjoyable. I enjoyed watching it.
Yeah, I thought it was a very fun movie to watch. Obviously I'm not in the industry, so I can't nitpick some of the inaccuracies that you probably saw, but definitely a fun movie to watch. All right, let's jump into the Springbank 10. And for anybody who's watching, if you have questions and we don't see it in the comments, feel free to go to the bottom, type into the actual question section, and then they stay there so we can take a peek at them later. All right, so the Springbank 10-year-old, the elusive Springbank 10, which is nearly, even though this is their entry level expression, it's still a challenge to find in almost any markets. So what are your general thoughts of the Springbank 10?
I love it. For me, it's all the right sides of savoury for my dram. And I'll say I chose this. This for me is a gateway to peat, or it was the gateway to peat for me. For me, it's got just enough, and peat drinkers will say, there's no peat in Springbank. But it's all the right things. With peat influence. It's a great entry point. I would say this, and it's either going to be this or a Clinleash, I think are two sort of eye-openers for me, is to like a soft enough peat.
Yeah,
I love it.
No, I agree. And both of those are two of my favorite whiskeys. But I agree. For me, I like peat. I like more heavily peated whiskeys than this one. But for me, the perfect amount of peat is the one that takes the back seat. It's not the main course. It's just kind of in the background. So you get those hints of that peat, a little bit of coastal. You get that kind of industrial oiliness of the Springbank. It's just really such an incredibly well-crafted whiskey. It's not a surprise why the Springbank craze of the last 2 years have happened, because it's extremely unique. Not many distilleries have this style of whiskey, and it's really engaging and just such an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, I love it. I love Springbank. That did make the list of places I visited when I was on my whiskey trip, and that's one where I fronted up to do the barley to bottle tour. Where you get to blend your own at the end, and it was spectacular. And it's funny, when you go there, you visited?
Yeah, that was the highlight of my trip to Scotland for sure.
Oh, but you know what, as well then, after seeing how it is, again, like we talked about, like, you imagine this thing as being quite industrial, or distilleries being fairly industrial and like just pumping stuff out, and then you go to Springbank and you realise it's not changed hardly anything.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's the same joke about their computer as a before.
Yep. That's exactly what he said.
But you then understand why the quantities are what they are. And, they're producing great stuff. You can't rush it. So it's great. I love it. It's probably, well, here's the thing as well. It would have been the wrong dram to give to me at the start of my journey, but I do wish I knew about it earlier, so I could have bought some earlier. Because now it's basically like Scotch's patty.
Yeah, it really is. And I was lucky enough to kind of engage with it early on in my whiskey journey, to the point where I have quite a stock of Springbank, Longrows, Hazelburns, but it's kind of to the point where I'm afraid to open. I know whiskey's meant to be opened and drunk, but at the same time, it's like, these are kind of investment vehicles now, because there's no way these whiskeys are going to be, the drinking experience isn't going to be worth the price that they're worth now. I mean, there's just no way. So it's just that mental, courage that it takes to open up one of these bottles, especially one of the more rare releases.
I would challenge you on that one, Tim, of like, okay, it's worth X. What could you do by opening it that will equate that? And for me, it's like, okay, if you rounded up a group of your friends and you said, lads, we're going to open this and we're going to throw away the cork and we're going to enjoy it all, and they've all experienced that, because now that is pretty much unobtainium for some of them.
Yeah, it really is.
That's worth more. That is worth more than whatever the price is.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. I would have to make sure the group of people I was getting would fully appreciate the significance of Springbank. I wouldn't bring in like 5 whiskey interested people, but have never really had anything, and they'd be like, "Oh man."
No, I remember I made that mistake, and I think I've even heard the same of like, know your audience is what you're giving them.
Yes.
I brought out, I think it was a Glendronach 15 or 18 at one point to some friends, and one of them just shot it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and I was like, okay. And I slowly took the bottle away and brought back some bottom shelf stuff.
Yeah, yep. I've had experiences just like that where people are shooting it back, and it's like, oh no, I mean, drink it how you want, but that's really you're not getting what you're supposed to be getting out of this whiskey. But yeah, the audience, you're exactly right. The know your audience, bring the correct whiskeys for them. So yeah, they're on my list to open at some point, special occasions and whatnot. But have you opened up your bottle that you blended at the Springbank Distillery?
No, not yet. And I am a bit of a sentimentalist. You know, I've got I started building a little cache of whiskies that I'm going to give to my son on the 21st.
Yeah.
That bottle might make it into that. Or at least maybe that's one I open with him. Yeah, I don't know.
So you're going to wait until his 21st and not the legal drinking age in Scotland, which would be his 18th?
No, I know. Well, for that one, I got him 18 bottles of wine.
Okay. All right.
And let's be honest. 18, you're probably still not ready for whiskey.
No.
I think 21.
Yeah, 21. You can grow. You can learn the appreciation, especially through wine. Wine's a good. Wine's usually the first form of alcohol before people kind of jump into whiskey, wine, and beer. So that's a great choice. All right, so I've got some whiskey related questions for you. What is your favorite distillery?
So I'm just laughing at. Is that Tinker? That's funny. Ben Dietrich there. Favourite distillery? What's yours? Buy me some time.
So my favorite distillery we just talked about, that's Springbank, and it was my favorite before it was everybody else's favorite. It was something that I just kind of gravitated towards and loved it. And luckily, I jumped in before the craze, so I was like I mentioned, I was able to develop a little bit of a collection of Springbank that I can kind of go back to. But that's definitely hands down my favorite distillery, and the second place one is probably quite a distance behind Springbank.
Okay. So can I give you a couple of answers?
All right.
So my favourite distillery for the liquid would probably also be Springbank.
Mm-hmm.
My favourite distillery to be at would be Rathie.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's just absence making the heart fonder.
Yeah.
Of all the distilleries so far that I've been to, that's the one that my mind goes to when I paint the perfect picture of like, I'm going to shut the world off, I'm going to sit here and drink a dram for the day and the night, and you stay there. That's a bucket list for me to do that. And the view is spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everyone talks about Isla and like Bunnahabhain and by the port and all this, but honestly, Rathie on its day is beautiful.
And that's
spectacular.
That's a relatively new distillery, right? 2014, is it?
Yeah, I think they're only I bet it's only 4 years old, 5 years old at most, I think. Yeah, and so you go to Skye and it's a little island, Rathie, off of Skye.
Yeah.
But the view is spectacular, and it's funny because the Alistair Day, the master distiller and the brains behind it, he's coined the hashtag like I think what was it, best distillery view.
Yeah. And
that's a bold statement because you've got things like Bunnahabhain looking at the Paps of Jura or whatever, to be honest, on Isla. But I think it's well earned.
Now, I have yet to have any of their whiskey. Is for its age, how does it compare to some of those other young distilleries out there like Ardnamurchan and some of the ones that are just kind of coming up now?
Well, I think it's probably an unfair comparison against Ardnamurchan because they waited longer, so their stuff is older.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what would be a comparison. I don't know. Maybe some of what Aaron's just done, right, or the new Aaron distillery.
The lag, yeah.
But Alistair created it to be good, young, and then obviously get better older. So I think it holds its weight. I was very impressed, and I was blown away with the inaugural.
Mm-hmm.
I had a very small sample. It did, I think I was on a blind. I blinded Leanne from Scotch in the Bayou on YouTube with it.
Yeah.
And it won the blind, And I swear we were sort of like, this could be Campbelltown, eh? This could be.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's worth trying. And the bottle's beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
The bottle is top 5 design bottles.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of their bottles. Somebody else mentioned as a young distillery, Locklear is another potential comparison.
Yeah, maybe. I've not had enough of Locklear. It's good as well, and it's what's encouraging is it's good now. It's just gonna get better.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great time to get into whiskey because there's just so many of these craft distilleries that are popping up that will kind of really they're taking the time for each stage of the whiskey making process to make it as good as possible. So that's what, my struggle is always, the value is always not great for small production. The price is going to be higher just by the nature of it being a smaller production. But you are supporting the distilleries. You are trying something new. And, there is a value in that sense to kind of explore these. So you must be... Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and what an exciting time as well, right? Like, a lot of the distilleries that are now turning of age, they're just as turning of age, they were set up before young age statement was okay and accepted by us. So they didn't know it was going to go there. They might have set up thinking we've got to wait 10 years. Yeah. And they things like Whisky come along and stuff just changes the zeitgeist.
Oh yeah, because now, and especially when they're really focusing on some of the early stage parameters of creating the whiskey, you can make a really good base spirit that has an engaging drinking experience at a younger age than some distilleries that might be kind of rushing some processes in order for huge production. So there's definitely something worth trying in those younger whiskeys. But speaking of Rassi, you must be interested in the Machrihanish distillery that is eventually going to come to Campbelltown, since it's the same ownership group, right?
Yes, yeah. That's Alistair's next baby. That's going to be fascinating. And to be fair, Campbelltown is about to mushroom, right? So a bunch of them.
Yeah, if anybody's looking for some real estate advice, buying up some land in Campbelltown right now is a smart move. 3 new distilleries are coming to town with the Dallargata, Witchburn, and Machrihanish, and then another golf course I think is coming to town. So I mean, it's going to be the new Isla, or the Isla 2.0 of Scotland.
Honestly, and they're starting to get their act together on their festival, right? And they place it the week before Isla, not that. Mm-hmm. It's got to be exciting for Campbelltown, for people in Campbelltown. And it's funny you joke about real estate. Some within my little whiskey crowd, a few of them kicked around the idea of like, let's buy an apartment. Yeah.
No, I was joking, but I've had those conversations too. It's like, man, if real estate wasn't so expensive right now in the United States and trying to, then I would try to get a group of people together to get something in Campbelltown, because, I mean, it's going to pay itself back in no time, especially as the popularity of the region grows. And it's so accessible to Isla. You're by Isla, you're by Erin. So, I mean, you've got a whole... basically craft whiskey scene in that area that people would just love to explore.
And it's a great drive. I love cars. I'm a car guy as well. Yeah. I love driving, and it's a beautiful drive down there.
Oh yeah.
Down the water.
Yeah, when I was in Scotland, we drove from Glasgow to all the way down to Springbank to Campbelltown, and it's just a spectacular drive. I mean, it's like a 3.5 hour drive, but it just flies by. There's plenty of places to stop and explore along the way. I mean, it really is a gorgeous countryside.
Yeah, and that's funny. I remember seeing people overtake me, go flying. I swear they were rushing, because I was getting to Springbank quickly for the tour, and it was near shop opening. Yeah. I swear that was flippers shooting down to get down to be in line for the store.
That was one of the most heartbreaking parts of going to Springbank was before the shop opened, there was a long line, and there was no like special releases that day, but people were just going in to buy whatever stock was on the shelves. And luckily, the cage bottlings, they sporadically and randomly put them on the shelves. So I was lucky enough to get into the shop at a time that they had some cage bottlings there. So I was very happy about that.
Yeah.
And one last note on new distilleries. This is not a Scotch whiskey distillery, but there's a new distillery just north of me from here. The master distiller is Shane Fraser, the former master distiller of Wolfburn. the owners were able to convince him to move to the United States, and they just released their first 3-year-old whiskey, and it is on par with some of the best young whiskey I've ever had. It's really phenomenal stuff. So keep an eye out for that American single malt. They've got 160-hour fermentation. It's called 10 Mile Distillery. In fact, I've got a little picture of the bottle right there.
And what's it called again?
10 Mile Distillery.
10 Mile Distillery. Okay.
Yeah, so
is that out? Is it widely available yet in the States?
it's available in New York State because that's where the distillery is. But nationwide, it's probably not as available. And their inaugural release is on the pricey side. I think it's priced at like $175-ish. But they said batch 2 will be in that $80 to $90 range. So that would be the one to keep an eye out for, and one that I'll definitely buy too. So if I happen to get it before it reaches your region, that'll be another sample I send off to you.
Well, I'm in a no bottle ban anyway, so
perfect. So you couldn't buy it even if you wanted to.
No.
What is your favorite cask type for a whiskey? What do you like the maturation to be in?
There you are. Now, see, that's a tough one.
That is a tough one.
Only because I think I know. So, for sure, a year ago, sherry.
Mm-hmm.
Sherry bombs, and I fully accept the raw distillate has been mutated,
mm-hmm.
but I like what it creates. I like that spot. I like it. But I will say I can sense that I am definitely coming across to ex-bourbon. And I think that's been my journey. And I guess everyone's journey is different, but I do feel eventually, probably, all roads lead to ex-bourbon.
Yep.
Which is funny because it's middle. It's the middle. You should start there. But
Yeah.
it didn't.
Yeah.
I wonder if more entry points are the extremes, and then you come to the middle.
I think that's exactly right, because I think people are attracted to that rich, bold sherry flavor profile or that heavy peat.
Yeah.
Those are things that kind of stand out to you. And when you drink like a younger ex-bourbon cask, it might seem a little underwhelming. But as you kind of progress in your journey, you realize that ex-bourbon cask really can deliver the distillery style better than most other styles of maturation. And then when you get some of those older ex-bourbon cask maturations, that's where you get some of those tropical fruits and creamy mangoes and pineapples and coconuts and all that really delicious sweet bourbon characteristic that really elevates the whiskey. So no, I think that's a common journey that you're on that makes a whole lot of sense.
And it's what you use the word style there. I heard that banded around when I would talk to ambassadors or distillers, and they would talk about house style.
Yeah.
And they have a core belief of what they want, and that's cool. And then they play around occasionally, right? I think Tomatin is a good one.
Yeah.
They've got a house style that is ex-bourbon. It's fruity, it's fruit forward, it's all of that. But they do little offshoots.
Yeah.
I think can kind of pull others in.
Yeah. Yeah, which is cool. I mean, some of these, and Glenmorangie is another great distillery that does tons of experimentation with dialing, pulling, rotating those other levers like yeast strains and different types of casks and all that kind of stuff. So that is kind of the fun part. I mean, that's for like the super whiskey geek who really is seeking out very specific notes in a whiskey, and not necessarily for the casual drinker who is just trying to figure out whiskey. But those are always fun to kind of explore.
Yeah, and you say yeast, and we're talking distilleries. Maybe one distillery I left off as the most intriguing in terms of also what I visited would be Loch Lomond.
Oh yeah.
Like if Loch Lomond is Willy Wonka of whiskey creation.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they do. They probably don't. In fact, I know they don't. They don't do a good job of sharing this or talking this. But they can create most anything there.
Yeah.
They've got such variety of setup.
Oh yeah.
And that, if they said, oh well, this is trending, they'll just reconfigure and push it through another, and then that.
Yeah.
Or to be fair, that's disingenuous, because that's not what Michael Henry and the team are about. They're about exploring flavour. So it's more like, well, we think about doing this. What would happen if, right? And that's how Chardonnay yeast and different yeast is getting thrown around, and that's bonkers.
Yeah.
Like unique.
Yeah, and speak of the devil, that's exactly what I've got on my desk right here. A little sample from Roy, the Loch Lomond, his special release that he had. That's the champagne yeast, which I haven't tried yet. It's still unopened sample, so that's one I need to get to very soon because I know people raved about it.
Well, and it's funny because he and I differ on this one because it's so unique and so different. And I asked him, like, Roy, if all whiskey had to taste like one thing, one lane, would it be that? And he was like, yes.
Oh, interesting.
And I disagree.
Okay.
And it's interesting because it was a bit challenging for. He brought a bottle to the Bastards Ball, the YouTube channel's get together, and it was challenging for quite a few people. Nobody said it was horrible or anything like that, but it's probably one of the most effervescent whiskeys I've had.
Yeah.
Seriously, how you get on with it.
No, you've really piqued my interest. I actually might have to crack this open this weekend and kind of explore it a little bit. And I can get what you're saying because I know some of Roy's past recommendations have been some of those really like intriguing, engaging whiskeys, but not necessarily ones that you fall in love with. It's like Roy has a very intriguing palate with him, and he's really seeking out these kind of nuances and styles that may not click with everybody, but I think Loch Lomond is a great example of just they're doing basically everything right. They have great entry level expressions at a good proof at a good price that may not click with everybody, but it's just such a high quality whiskey. Their 12-year-old up until like a year ago was $30 in this region. For a 12-year-old whiskey, 46% ABV. In my opinion, it was the best value in Scotch whiskey, period. There's nothing better. The 18-year-old I got for like $64 for 46% 18-year-old whiskey, which is insane. It's unheard of in today's day and age, especially as prices are getting up higher. And then, like you said, they do tons of experimentation. I love their single, their 100% malted barley single grain whiskey because they're using column stills, and it's like, man, it's just such an intriguing idea, and just to see how it changes the overall whiskey. So they're doing some great stuff at Loch Lomond. All right, last question before we jump on to our final dram of the night. If you know this, how many bottles do you currently have in your collection?
I've not got a spreadsheet like you.
I do. It's open right now.
I would say I'm probably at about 300 now.
Okay.
But that's 300 with I'm making concerted effort to start drinking and start finishing, and that's why I paused buying. I would I know you as well. You're guilty of like bottles on the floor. I want to get past that point.
Yes.
And I want to have. I've got 2 cabinets that I customize, and that's my total that I would like. And that's to fit in that cabinet. I think it was maybe 180.
Okay, so you got a while to go to get down to that 180.
Yeah.
I'm right around that number too. I'm thinking about like 330. And then the shelf you see right here was the ones that lifted them from the floor. So right now I don't have any on the floor, so I'm thankful for that. But I'm at my max capacity too. But there's I just saw a video today about like open all your unopened bottles. But the downside of opening up every single bottle you have is that means every other bottle takes that much longer to finish. So if you don't focus on a segment of your bottles, you're just going to grow infinitely, and you're never going to finish any bottles off. So that would be the argument of maybe wait to open some until you finish off a few others.
I do envy people that are buying and opening straight away, because, right, like imagine you'd bought that Glengoyne 15, didn't open it. Okay, all right, fair enough, you've not got the opportunity to buy it right now anyway, but you wouldn't have known how much you would have liked it, and you'd missed the chance to get again. So it's a tricky one. I rely on a bunch of my other whiskey friends to be the ones that buy and open. So I get double intel. No, that's good. I mean, it's always worth having people that share a similar palate so you can get that intel and know whether you think you're like that or not. But I would say most of my bottles, they go unopened for quite a while because, I'm not going to cheat a bottle that I bought 2 years ago and just never open it. I got to get to that eventually. So I'll open up something. And sometimes I do have that regret. It's like, oh man, I should have gotten more of these. But at the end of the day, I see how much whiskey I have, and I'm okay if I missed out on getting a duplicate of something I really loved. Yeah.
You know, and then another like how many would you say are opened of your 300?
I don't know, maybe 30.
So 30 are closed.
No, 30 are open. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So you've only got 10% open. The rest are still closed.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
solid. That's a good restraint. I've got about 100 open of my 330, so I've got a higher number. Though I do focus on a segment of it. But another advantage of keeping bottles closed for a little longer is that you can actually insure whiskey. So in case of a catastrophe in your house, you have some sort of financial backing, because these are not cheap hobbies that we have. So it's worth trying to get a little of insurance on. And once you open it, you can't insure it anymore. So that's another side benefit that not many people think or talk about. And since I work in insurance, that's what I think of. So all right, let's jump into your generous sample you gave me, the Tomatin. I guess it's about an 18-year-old whiskey. Tell me a little bit about this one that we have here.
Oh man, wait, had you sampled this yet?
This will be my first sip right here.
Oh, right, look at this. This is a Instagram gold. A whiskey that blew my mind. I heard about this from the Scott on Scotch Test Dummies.
Mm-hmm.
I remember seeing their video where they were in the distillery after hours, and they streamed live. And so it's a distillery only. They've got a few casks open. I can't even remember all the types. But this is PX, Pedro Jimenez. It was, I think, no less than 6 years in the PX. So, it's not a finish. It's a double maturation.
Yeah, for sure.
And they open it, and then it's open until you've run through it. So if you time it right, you could be getting a 20-year-old or whatever, right? So this was distilled 30th of November. I'm switching the dates because it's in the UK. 30th of November 2001, and then it was bottled. Actually, that's when I was there. The 13th of November 2019.
Okay.
And it was cask 34880. And it blew me away. It was like all the decadence and sweetness of a dessert, of a Christmas dessert.
Oh yeah, I mean you can just tell on the nose it's super rich. I get some like coffee notes to it on the nose.
Sure, yeah.
And just some like all those dark dried fruits.
Yeah, it's 53.7%.
All right.
Yeah.
And do you usually drink this one neat, or do you add a few drops of water? What's your preferred style drinking of this one?
No, I don't typically. Maybe just add some water to stretch it out. It doesn't need it.
No. Oh yeah, that is really nice.
It melts your face good.
Oh yeah.
It's all the best of sherry, and added with all the sort of spice and excitement of a whiskey. And I absolutely, caveat. You can't pick up hardly anything of Tomatin in here, right? Like it's, but
yeah,
what it is.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't explored a ton of Tomatin in my whiskey journey to this point. I've got a couple of bottles, none that I've really kind of dove deep into. But yeah, I mean, in a blind tasting, I would have no idea what this was. But yeah, I mean, this reminds me a little bit of. I've got a 17-year-old Tobermory that was finished in Madeira casks, and it's got that similar rich, sherried flavor profile. It's kind of like you're taking a bite out of a dark fruit, like a plum or something.
Totally. It's sticky. If you were to liquefy sticky toffee pudding,
oh yeah,
it's this. It's spectacular, and they've got a good supply. So I've got to know Scott Adamson from Tomatin quite well, and as soon as I had it, I was like, okay, I'm going to buy some now, but how much should I buy? Because I'd like to know how much you've got coming.
Yeah.
So he said they've got a good parcel of the same cask types and I guess supply, so it's good for a while. But if you're ever in the distillery, because I think it might have gone back to being distillery only. Okay. Because at one point, I think during COVID, you could do it online from the distillery, but maybe within the UK only. But this is stunning.
Yeah, no, this is the style that I'm gonna seek out, and Tomatin is another one of those that isn't heavily sought after, so you can get some really great valued whiskeys that deliver an excellent
Honestly.
drinking experience.
For sure. I think Tomatin is, and it's funny, I think they're okay being a little bit under the radar. They
Oh,
definitely
yeah.
are,
Yeah.
they're for us, for sure.
Mhm.
They're for the enthusiasts. But the size of them as well means that they've got a good supply.
Yeah.
So that, honestly, it would be my top 5 distilleries, Tomatin.
Oh, wow. All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the only other Tomatin I have right now, I've got the 14-year-old Portwood, and I may have another one somewhere on the shelf, but it's one that I need to explore more because I know they make, even their entry level bottles are for enthusiasts. I've got the Dolces too. That's the other Tomatin I've had, which is a great entry level whiskey. I mean, that's a really nice one.
Again, and Roy uses that all the time in blind.
Yeah.
In terms of punching way above its weight. And also, with a touch on peat, Hoboken is another whiskey that comes from Tomatin, and it's 15 year. So it kind of came out of nowhere with a 15 year.
Yeah.
Last year, and it's an amazing blend of sherry and peat. And that for me was my dram of last year in terms of new bottles opened. That's spectacular. So much so, that would be the bottle I would break my ban for, and it replaces what Teapot Dram from Glengoyne was for me in terms of stellar and good value.
Yeah.
It's really great.
Yeah. That Teapot Dram definitely doesn't give that value anymore. It's insanely. Yeah, this is really great. And yeah, I'm glad I have some more of this too, because right now it's a touch warm for me. It was a hot day here in the East Coast. So I would want to drop it down to like 65 degrees, which is my ideal drinking temperature. And that's because, when whiskey gets a little too warm, some of those flavors kind of, come out as a little more alcohol-y than you'd want them to. But man, this is such a wonderful whiskey.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Yeah, thank you so much for this. I definitely need to repay the favor here and send you out a couple of samples.
No, good.
We got a question here. Where I live, it's rather impossible to find the whiskeys you recommend. Do you have some sort of recommendations based on availability? Well, I guess the first question is, where do you live? I mean, some countries, no one delivers to them, so it might be challenging to get to. Lately, I have been using auction a little more often to find some more rare bottles. They're not necessarily great values, but you're going to get interesting whiskeys that provide a unique perspective. So, I mean, it really just depends on where you live, so it's hard to answer that question.
And I think you and I chatted, I think you still buy a lot of your stuff from the UK or Europe.
Yeah, almost exclusively from Europe at this point.
Yeah. I guess you just have to cluster it so that the shipping doesn't cripple you, but
yeah,
I'm the same. I would say I buy more out of the UK, and it's tricky because as soon as you compare price, you're like, well, I'm not going to play that tariff. I'll lump it together and the tariff can go to shipping.
Yeah, no, exactly, because you pay the ex-VAT prices. Most stores will charge you the ex-VAT prices if they're shipping to the U.S. And then if you bundle, then you get down to around $20 per bottle that you're shipping, and that's comparable to taxes that you'd probably pay in the U.S. anyways. And most of these whiskeys that we're having are going to be more affordable in the UK than they are in the United States. So that's my recommendation for people who are listening. There's easily Googleable UK stores that you can seek out that have reasonable shipping. Although more and more stores I've noticed are jacking up that shipping price to the US. So that's something you have to consider as you seek out these bottles.
Alternatively, buy a plane ticket, take an empty case, and you've taken care of yourself for a year.
That's exactly right, and then you'll have the experience and the memories to go along with it, and that's exactly what I did when I went to Scotland. I had an empty case full of air foam packaging, and I packed it to the brim to the point where I was very close to breaking the weight limit. So luckily, I just got under. All right, so I've got a few questions, a few last remaining questions here that we'll go through quickly before we get you out of here, since it's getting late. I'm sure you got some things to do. When you're not drinking whiskey neat, what's your next drink of choice?
That's a good one. if I'm not drinking whiskey neat, what's the next?
So
I mean, I do like a cocktail.
all right.
Do you mean how am I taking my whiskey if I'm not neat?
No, I'm saying any style of drink. So whether it's a cocktail, wine, beer, rum, tequila, like what's your next choice? What's the next alcohol you drink?
Aye. Well, if I'm having steak, it's got to be wine.
Yeah.
But if it's just pure enjoyment, a cocktail. I love a Negroni. It took me a while to come around to Negroni.
Yeah.
But I do like a Negroni, and I've discovered maybe the only other place for rye, other than aging a cask for Rassi, is in a Manhattan. I discovered Manhattans recently, and they're knock your socks off.
Oh, yeah. Do you like old fashions too, or just Manhattans?
I've not so much come around to an old fashioned. I might have to dabble a bit just to see if I can crack it.
Yeah.
I'd sooner probably have a Manhattan though.
Yeah. I mean, Manhattan. They're very similar. Obviously, Manhattan doesn't have the ice. It's replaces the sugar with vermouth, and then it's about the same after that. But dabbling with the bourbon versus the rye is always good too. And yes, I think rye whiskey plays best in a cocktail, whether it's a old fashioned or a Manhattan.
Yeah.
All right, so this is a non-whiskey or alcohol-related question. It's just kind of a fun question. What's your favorite action film?
Oh. It's funny because I know you've asked this of people before.
I have, yes.
Can we say Star Wars is an action film?
Yeah, I mean, it's very action-y. You know, it's sci-fi action. I think that's a good answer. It qualifies.
As a laser, can a laser be... Oh, shit. Oh, man. I should have thought of this because I know you asked it.
You know, there's no wrong.
I'm a child of the 80s and 90s, so if it's not Star Wars, oh man, because Indiana Jones is it an action?
Yeah, that's absolutely action. Yeah, it's very.
I'd probably say Indiana Jones then over Star Wars, only because let's be honest, action's probably got to be guns, not lasers.
Yeah, probably. All right, so since you're a product of the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Who is on your Mount Rushmore of action heroes? Who do we have?
Well, Harrison Ford has to be there.
Of course.
I mean, Stallone.
He's got to be there, right? Stallone?
He's got, aye. And then if Stallone's there, Arnie's got to be there.
Arnie has to be there. I mean, he's legendary, right?
Yeah. And then because Die Hard is probably one of the greatest movies ever made, Willis has got to go on. So I think I've got 4, right?
That's 4. And I think that's a great 4, too. I mean, yeah, all of them are in iconic action films. You got Terminator, you got Rocky, Rambo, you've got Die Hard, which is one of the greatest action films of all time, and then Indiana Jones and all the other action films that Harrison Ford has been in. So, that's a great pick right there, a great Mount Rushmore.
All right. Who's on your Rushmore?
So you got to have Schwarzenegger. You know, I love the Predators, Total Recall, just the 80s, early 90s action. I do love those films. Stallone has to be on there. Tom Cruise, I think, might be on there because the Mission Impossible films, Edge of Tomorrow, he's always running in every movie, so he basically makes dramas into action films. So he might have to be on there for me. And then just recently, just because it's one of my favorite series, Keanu Reeves, because you got he's in
John
2
Wick.
iconic action series. You got John Wick and then The Matrix. So for me, they would be up there, but it'd be hard for me to kick off Harrison Ford and Bruce Willis for Tom Cruise and Keanu Reeves. So I can understand that argument.
I mean, Keanu's maybe earned his place there with those two. I'm excited to hear that I believe Constantine has been greenlit for a sequel.
It has been, yes, I heard that.
That's exciting.
So that'll be his 3rd action franchise. Plus, he was in Speed. So I mean, he has a solid argument, and his choreographed fighting.
Point Break as well. Don't forget Point Break.
The Point Break, exactly. I mean, he's got a good resume of action movies that warrants the discussion if he's on Mount Rushmore or not. So, I think it's a good discussion. What is and this is another question you're gonna have to ponder for a second. What is one thing you haven't done in your life that you wish you could do?
Achieve some sort of sporting winning moment. Now, I did karate when I was young. I got a team. Let's qualify that, a team.
Yeah.
I never was on a team and was involved in a big win. So I've never experienced that adrenaline, what that feels like.
So you need to start like a work softball team or something, and compete locally to win the local work after work softball team, right? I don't know.
Tim, you saw me. I'm not exactly match fit for anything other than whiskey drinking right now. But maybe one. Let's see if we still get it.
All right. How about competitive blind whiskey tasting with you and your team of whiskey tasters for like a tournament style championship?
I would never profess to be being good at blinds. I think I've lucked my way through almost all in any.
Well, that's when you have to rely on your teammates. You recruit Roy over and some of the other efficient palates. So then you can just kind of sit on the bench as they take you to the championship and feel that thunder.
Well, I'm riding your coattails on the podcast, so why not on the whiskey thing as well? So that's a good shout.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I'm going to get you out of here on this final question. If you could share a dram with 4 famous people, either dead or alive, which 4 people are you sharing a dram with?
Oh, that's a good one. While I think I'd love to have shared a whiskey with my granddad.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously we weren't our ages and past never crossed at that point. But famous people, dead or alive. That's a great one. Well, I mean, Offerman has to be there just because he, you could just kick back and let him storytell.
Yeah.
But he's so whiskey knowledgeable. So Offerman would be in there. Oh man, that's a tough one.
That is. I never said these questions would be easy.
No. I'm trying to think. See, Harrison Ford, I don't think he's a good human. I don't want. You know what I mean? I think he's great in his roles, but I think if you met him, you'd be disappointed. So he's not at the table. Oh man, who would it be? I mean, I'm a big Bruce Lee fan. He probably wouldn't drink whiskey, but let's put him on the table anyway.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm thinking through now. Oh, that's a tough one.
You got 2. Well, we'll count your granddad too. So you got 3. So who would you round out the table with? Who would be the 4th member to kind of bring the whole table together for an intriguing conversation?
Yeah. Oh man. Oh, my mind is dancing around. Just because he had a beautiful mind, and he would, yeah. Muhammad Ali.
Ooh.
And again, he probably wouldn't be drinking whiskey, but it'd be good to try and convert him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that would be a great conversation. I mean, and especially, given all of his, outspoken civil rights movement and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that would be a very engaging conversation for sure. I think that's a good.
I tell you what, I'll kick my granddad out, and I would add in Billy Connolly when he drank.
Okay.
That would be a hoot.
All right, that would be a great quintet of people at the table for the conversation. I like
diverse. That's about as diverse as you can get.
And that's what you want. You want people from different backgrounds, different stories to tell at the table, and nothing brings out good conversation than a few good drams around a table with friends. All right, Gregor, I want to thank you for hopping on here with me for the hour and chatting over these drams. I really, again, thank you for the dram you gave me when I was in Oregon, and I really enjoyed this. And if you'd like to do it again, I will send you a few drams, and we can hop back on here sometime in the next few months and kind of go through them and explore different styles.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for inviting me on, Tim.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and have a good night, and we'll be in touch soon.
All right, cheers.
All right, cheers.
Take care.
You too.